You may think you know everything about this Northwest favorite, but a new book called A Place Both Wonderful and Strange claims to have the extraordinary untold history of the hit show Twin Peaks, based right here in Washington State. And joining me now on Twin Peaks Day is the book's author, Scott Meslow. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Okay, I'm really excited. Like we just said, it was shot here in Washington. Means a lot to everyone here. What made you want to write a book about Twin Peaks?
Well, my history with Twin Peaks, this is really one from the heart. It's coming from a very real place. I found the show in middle school, and so it was one of those things where I would, in the summer, bike up to the video store and check out whatever VHSs I could find. Especially because the college kid there didn't really care if it was a horror movie, and I didn't know what Twin Peaks was. I just pulled it off the shelf. I was like, cool cover, cool title, check it out. I didn't even know it was a TV show, and it just happened to be the first episode of the show. So I watched it and I was just like, that was crazy. I've never seen anything like that. I would love to see more of this. Realized it was a whole show, dug in deep, and have never really come up for air. Decades later, here I am writing a book about the show.
That is so amazing. And how did a show you think that was canceled after 2 seasons really evolve into being one of the most influential cult-like shows ever?
Well, Twin Peaks has a really fascinating arc because it came out huge, like Super Bowl numbers, like 34 million people watched the pilot.
That.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So it was huge right away, and everyone wanted to know who killed Laura Palmer. This is the central mystery of the show, but it was one of those things where TV was maybe not quite ready for it yet. It was so serialized. If you missed an episode, it was very hard to catch up again. And then the network really wanted them to solve the murder faster than they wanted to. So the network ultimately won that battle, and after that, I think a lot of people, they were like, great, we solved it, we know the answer, we don't need to watch more of this, even though the show remained really fascinating. And it ended on a crazy cliffhanger. And so it unexpectedly, the show was canceled after 2 seasons. They kind of knew the writing was on the wall at that point, but they had more story they wanted to tell, which is why it was so crazy when people kept finding the show over the years. There's a fan festival, especially on a show like this, we should talk about Snoqualmie and North Bend, for many, many years, and this started in the mid-90s. People would come to that town where they shot the show to kind of experience Twin Peaks for themselves, and those fans really kept the torch alive. There's a famous line about the Velvet Underground, where not that many people bought that record, but all the people who bought that record went and started a band. I think Twin Peaks is a little bit like that, where not that many people watched it at the end, but everyone who did started a TV show. And so many shows, if you talk about Lost, or Severance, or True Detective, all of these shows, The Sopranos, they've all talked about Twin Peaks as a major influence on their work. And so the show's reputation just kind of grew and grew until they brought it back.
What a compliment, and here you are writing a book. What is something really surprising as you were doing some research writing this book about the show? Did you come across anything like that?
I hope there's stuff like that in every chapter, because people were so generous with their time and their stories. But one that comes to mind, there's a villain in the show, Leo Johnson, who's kind of this creepy, kind of rough guy. And I was talking to the casting director. It happens to be her son who played that role. And I just asked her, if it hadn't been him, if it hadn't been your son who David Lynch really sparked to, which actor do you have in mind for that? And she was like, oh, I know exactly who it was. It was Brad Pitt. It was Brad Pitt, just kind of on the cusp of fame, like before he really blew up. And you just think, how fascinating would that, how different would Hollywood be if he, instead of being an A-list actor, or maybe he still would have made it, who knows. But to see him on Twin Peaks, that's a real sliding doors moment that I just think, what an interesting time for the show that would have been.
Oh my gosh. And with the cliffhanger too, it's like, do you think it would ever come back? And like recreate something?
Well, that was what was so fascinating about what happened. Showtime brought it back in 2017 for 18 episodes, and it was David Lynch and Mark Frost, the original creators, doing it again, and they didn't do it as a reboot. They did it as a continuation of the show. And so a lot of the actors, including actors who basically hadn't worked since the show went off the air, came in and filmed, 25 years later, and it picks up like that. Like, you have to learn what happened in those intervening 25 years. So for fans, it was a real gift.
Okay, and I want to know your opinion. How did Twin Peaks, you think, change television in the 1990s?
I think there wasn't really an artfulness to TV in the same way. You could always find the occasion, Hill Street Blues was a great show before that, or Wise Guy. There were these occasional great shows. But what happened, the reason the show got picked up at all is that, ABC was in last place. They were willing to take a gamble on something. David Lynch was this kind of strange and acclaimed director, of course. He was famous for Blue Velvet at the time. And they just kind of went, why don't we let, the art guys make a TV show and we'll just see what happens. And I think that inspired a lot of people to say, this medium's potential has not been fully realized. And so eventually, even though the show ended pretty quickly, other people picked up that thread.
Definitely. And I understand you're an acclaimed movie and television critic. How do you approach works that you're critiquing?
I really love to just kind of try to clear my mind when I'm watching something. I like to, if I'm going to sit in a movie theater and review a film, I sit down and I just kind of go, inevitably through my job, I know stuff about the production. I know who the actors are going to be. I know the previous work of the director. But I try to just start a blank slate the whole thing and just go, let's watch what they're doing. Let's evaluate what's on the screen. And then, hopefully at the end I have some ideas and sit down and write about it.
Definitely. You touched on this. You just went to an event in Snoqualmie and North Bend. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that was incredible. This happens every year. It's the real Twin Peaks Festival, and it draws people nationally and internationally. This year I met people from France and Italy. It's where I launched the book. I did a signing there, and it felt right to do it in the real Twin Peaks. And so it's a gathering of the people who really love this show. And one of the things that's amazing about the show is so much of what they filmed is still there. So
really?
The diner, where there's the famous coffee and cherry pie, you can go and eat it if you want. You can stay at the Salish Lodge, which in the TV show is the Great Northern, the luxury hotel. So many of the filming sites are still there. And so the fans really love to come. There aren't that many opportunities like that for other film and TV shows to really go where it all really is and feel like you're there. And so to be surrounded by the people who love the show the most and are really experiencing this, it's a really special thing. And it happens every year.
Well, there you go. I need to go next time. Thank you so much, Scott, for being here. This was fun.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kelly.
And again, Scott's event. He's having one tonight from 7 to 8 p.m. at Elliott Bay Book Company. Registration is not required, so make sure to check that out.